Welcome to episode 88 of the Various and Sundry podcast. I am your host, Matt Harmon, joined live from the Vault Studio on the beautiful campus of Grace College and Theological Seminary by my good friend, my colleague, my co-host, and the man who is our lead Greek professor for the semester.
Oh, you almost missed one there.
John Scott Sloat.
The Ocho Ocho episode.
Yeah.
We're here.
88.
Are we 12 away from my? No, it's documented well. My math skills aren't great, but I'm pretty sure we're pretty close to 100.
Yes. I can confirm that 88 is reasonably close to 100. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Should I be concerned? Has someone else set up the grade book in your Greek class? So
Actually,
that the numbers...
I just imported yours from when you used to teach it.
Okay.
And so I think with reasonable assurance.
So there's no calculating involved on your part. It's just
no.
Plug numbers in and
that's right.
Moodle does the magic.
That's right. Yep.
Okay. Well, if you'd like to get in touch with the podcast, you can find us on social media at VNSPod on Twitter. Email the show, variousandsundrypodcast@gmail.com. On Facebook, Various and Sundry Podcast. On YouTube, Various and Sundry Podcast. And we would love for you to go on to the Apple Podcast app and leave us a review and a rating. And, John, we have breaking news.
Dun, 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 dun.
We have a new review posted.
Yeah, from Danny.
In Ohio. Yeah.
And we're getting some music through. Ladies and gentlemen, we are in a vault. We have concrete walls around us. And our, I don't even know what to call this thing, podcasting recorder doohickey will pick up local radio stations from time to time.
Yeah, one specific one. It's sort of a classic rock one-ish. Like when we were getting ready this morning and doing the testing, we had Toto's Africa filtering through. So
so if you just heard something, that's what that was.
Yeah, I think we've addressed it. You moved the microphone cable away from your metallic coffee mug there, and I think that fixed it.
You think that my coffee mug's
I don't know.
functioning as some sort of antenna
I don't.
for the radio station?
It's a portal into another universe for all we know. But in any case, we're recording on a Tuesday morning.
Early morning.
Well,
I think earlier
than we normally do. Yeah. I mean, if this were a Monday or a Wednesday or a Friday, you'd be in the middle of Greek.
I'd be in the middle of Greek right now.
Yeah. So this is after Labor Day weekend, and of course, in terms of the world of sports, big college football weekend. Mm-hmm. College football off to its inaugural weekend here. So let's dive right in with the most significant, which of course was the Ohio State Buckeyes winning their season opener, 45-31.
Yes. And
did you watch any of this?
I did not.
Way past your bedtime. It started at 8 o'clock.
Way
come
past
on.
my bedtime, yes. The score was a little closer than I expected it to be.
Well, I mean, the spread was around 14, and that's what they won by. So, I mean, it was, if you pay attention to those sorts of things.
Which it's becoming more and more ubiquitous.
Oh, gosh.
It feels like
can't avoid it now.
We pay a lot more attention to gambling now.
So, I mean, actually, they trailed at the half, 14-10.
Okay.
And their freshman quarterback, C.J. Stroud, had some shaky freshman moments in that first half before.
But he settled down.
Yeah. So I think in the second half, he was like 5 of 8 in terms of passing. But that accounted for something like 160 yards and 4 touchdowns. So he only threw one pass that wasn't a touchdown. Lots of big plays. Like all of Ohio State's scoring plays were over 38 yards.
Wow.
So big explosive plays.
Okay.
Defense still has some scary issues there. That's a big concern moving forward. They play Oregon this upcoming Saturday, so that's a big game for them. Thankfully, they have that at home at noon, which will be 9 a.m. for Oregon. So, little strategic advantage there.
Absolutely.
But other college football news, the biggest game of the weekend was Georgia against Clemson. Georgia won 10-3.
Yeah, exciting game.
And there were no offensive touchdowns. The only touchdown was a pick six by Georgia.
Awesome.
So I think Georgia's defense is really good. I just don't know how good their offense is, and it's just kind of hard to know what to take from a game like that. Okay, brace yourself, Hoosier fans.
It was a bad weekend for the Hoosiers.
Oof, man.
It was a bad weekend.
I mean, it's probably a bad sign when they spell Indiana wrong on the jersey, right?
One jersey.
Yeah.
One jersey, which I don't know how that even happens.
But it's still a bad omen, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Particularly the jersey they show on social media.
Yes.
The athletic department tweets it out, and I imagine it goes through like 3 or 4 people before it gets posted, right?
Who knows?
But nobody caught it.
Yeah, props to you. So apparently they can't spell and they can't play football, apparently.
because they got whooped on.
They got beat down by Iowa on the road. I think it was 34-3, I think was the final. It was a massive. It was a so I think it'll be a little quiet on the IU football front for a while in terms of the woofing and that until they play Ohio State, and then they'll kind of pop their heads up probably, which is it's like October 23rd or something like that, and then they'll sort of pop up and do some woofing.
Yeah, it does. So was last year for IU just magic?
I think IU is better than what they showed this Saturday, but a little reality check for them, I think, in any case. And then Notre Dame survived in overtime against an unranked Florida State team.
Not good. In
fairness. But, looking at you, Lee in Indiana, it's curious how our Irish contingent feels about surviving a Florida State team that is not especially great this year on the road. So anyway, their quarterback played fine. Jack Cohn, grad transfer from Wisconsin to Notre Dame. He played fine.
So he's a 1-year rental kind of.
Yeah, I think so. And of course Alabama just dominated. They by far look. Now they played Miami, who is overrated. They are not the 14th best team in the country, but they just blasted Miami. So in any case, it's just nice to have meaningful football back on.
And with crowds and all those things which we didn't have last year. And
yep. Yeah, that was very enjoyable.
All those things were good.
So do you want to throw in anything about your Mets here?
They won 7 of 9. So we're 3.5 games out in the division. So 25 games to go.
So a glimmer of hope from
There is a glimmer. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. A small glimmer, but we've got to hit. We got to win games. So
Okay. And then the NFL season starts this week.
Thursday night.
Yes.
I just learned I have tickets Sunday after Thanksgiving to Colts Bucks.
Okay.
So get to see Tom Brady.
Is that Scott Sloat coming through for you there?
That's Scotter coming through.
Okay. All right.
Coming through, yeah.
Yeah, okay. So
recent addition to Hoosier land here.
Yes, he will now be Scott in Indiana.
Yeah. Or just Dad, Dad in Indiana.
Yes, indeed. Well, have you ever been to Lucas Oil Stadium?
I've never been to Lucas Oil. Isn't that wild? When I've lived here, I've been to is it the one in Tennessee? Is that Nielsen?
I don't remember the name of the stadium there in Tennessee.
Okay. I've been to the one in Nashville. Never been to Soldier Field, but I've gone back to Pittsburgh, watched a game there, gone to Cleveland, watched a game there, but never to Lucas Oil.
I've been in the stadium, but not for a football game. I actually took a tour of the stadium a few years ago, which if you get a chance to do that, it's great. It's an amazing facility.
Yeah,
but
supposedly we're on the 20. Halfway down, something like that. So those are
and who do your Jets open with?
Carolina.
That's right.
So the return of Sam Darnold, but yes. I think we're in Carolina. So
okay, yes.
So it should be interesting.
Yeah, Zach Wilson against Sammy D.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. My favorite Mormon against Sammy D.
Okay. But you're reasonably optimistic for the Jets season in terms of –
I think I'm more – like I think I said losing record, but I think they show some glimmers, win 7 games.
Okay, so 7-10.
7-10.
I'll help you with the math there.
Thank you. 7-10. But most of the projections I see are like 3-4 wins is what I'm seeing out there.
Oh, okay.
So, but I think they have a good defensive line. I think they have a better offensive line, and I think they'll just squeak some out.
It's just so hard to know. From what you see in the preseason, you get a brand new quarterback.
And so the NFL is so like in flux. It feels like goodness. So one team could just come together all of a sudden, and 3 players could have a great season, and everything changes.
Yep. It'll be nice to have some meaningful NFL football on. I was thinking this past Sunday, like this is the last Sunday afternoon without football for until the week, end of January.
Right, the week before the Super Bowl.
Yeah. So, in any case, we ready to move on?
I think so, yeah.
Okay. So last week we talked about what makes a good teacher. So it only seems fair that this week we talk about what makes a good student. So let's start, John, with were you a good student in your early years?
In my early years, no. No, I was not. I think I leaned on my own cleverness versus actual studying and engaging in schoolwork. I think I just leaned on my own ability to figure things out or to see education as more of a game.
Okay.
So I gamified it as, okay, what's it going to take me to get a reasonably good grade on this test or quiz or whatever, and went from there. I'm willing to bet in middle school, high school, you were a very good student.
Yeah, I was a good student. I was, but at the same time, I was probably one of those kids where I had to work a little bit, not a lot. So I was not a brilliant kid in terms of just like no work, show up, just know it and do it. So I had to work a little bit at school, and I did take classes. Like I was in all of the like honors, top classes, sorts of things. So I did have my struggles at points. I was not a good student in physics or calculus. I like to say that I was good at math until there were more letters than numbers involved.
Yeah.
And so that kind of gets you through algebra. And, then you get into geometry, and then I kind of struggled once we got to pre-cal, and then calculus was rough. But in any case, I didn't and even in college, my major was not difficult. So I was a procrastinator.
Sure.
I just sort of, got things done, except for when it came to taking Greek. I had to work a little bit at Greek. That was not just show up and get it done kind of thing.
And that paid off.
It did. Yeah, that seems to have paid off. But
I think even in college, I was first couple of years leaning on my own cleverness, ability to gamify something, figure out the least amount of work to get a good grade. And then I think my junior year is probably when I started picking up the studying and the working and taking New Testament Bible exposition with Ed. I'm sure you remember Ed.
Yes.
And I think that's what really kicked me into overdrive when I couldn't just lean on my own cleverness and had to work. And then the following year, after taking that class, I was like, I think I want Greek. And then I think I need to go to seminary. And that was when when I would say I kicked it into overdrive and really I did all the reading and wrote all the papers and studied for tests and quizzes and those sorts of things.
Yeah, and I think that's probably a pretty common experience for people who go on to do even in college or even on into grad work, that it takes somebody figuring out what they're interested in, and then when they find the subject area that they're interested in, suddenly they're willing to put in the work to learn, as opposed to just the what do I have to do to get by to survive in this class kind of thing. So, I think that that's one of those dynamics where even when you talk with students and you can just kind of tell, it's like, well, wait till you maybe hit a subject that really engages you, and then you'll find yourself actually motivated to, do the reading and put the work in.
Oh, yeah.
What were some of your favorite subjects in school?
I'm assuming you're talking pre-seminary.
Pre-seminary, and even pre-college, perhaps. I mean,
yeah. So some of the basics. I always had a knack for math. So, but probably similar to you.
I believe Danny in Ohio would
disagree. I actually excelled as we got into algebra and some of those things, even imaginary numbers that Nate in Ohio, I'm sure, is going to love that I bring up on here. I did pretty well at those things. English was not my thing. History was okay.
And yet here you are teaching church history for us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, I didn't.
You've come around.
Yeah. I didn't take church history in high school.
Okay.
It was American government and those sorts of things.
Okay.
But always a knack for that. Never really – I was always clever enough to get by in the sciences. So, for instance, instead of having a final exam for physics, what our high school teacher did was we had physics Olympics. And we had to create these different things. So one of them that I remember was you get 20 pieces of paper and a yard of tape, and we are going to put an egg in whatever contraption you can make out of that paper and tape. And we're going to put an egg in there, drop it from 2.5 stories, something like that. And your egg has to survive. And whoever uses the least amount of paper wins.
Okay.
And I won. Like I won that because I was able to just sort of figure out what's going to work well, what's
okay.
And I modeled it after like a commercial I saw. I think it may have been for a Dodge, talking about the crumple zone and the accidents. And so I created a crumple zone on this thing. I think I used like a sheet and a half of paper, something like that.
I see. So basically, I mean, one of the things I appreciate about you, John, is you're the kind of guy that likes to figure things out.
Yes.
And so your go-to is YouTube. And Google.
YouTube, Google, podcast,
But if someone says, how do you do this? Your inclination is, well, let's Google it. Let's YouTube it.
That's right.
And so even at that age, before YouTube and even before Google, probably before Google.
Google was early.
Infancy, yeah. I mean, you're taking what you're learning from
car commercials.
From car commercials.
Yeah. Crumple zones.
But crumple zones, yeah. Okay.
Saves the humans inside as well as the egg.
As well as the egg, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, that's good to know. That's good to know. I was more of a I did enjoy history. Though here's the thing. History is one of those subjects that you got to have the right prof.
That's right.
Because even if the content is interesting, it's possible for a bad teacher to make it mind-numbingly boring, even if you really like history. And so I remember hating my European history class in high school because I had a terrible teacher. And then the very next year having American history, who I had a great teacher. And just it made all the world of difference there. But I think as we think about what makes a good student, I think I would start with, in one sense, where we started last week with what makes a good teacher, in trying to frame this around the idea of loving God and loving neighbor. That there's a sense in which being a good student is an act of worship. Mm-hmm. Because it's a way of uniting knowledge with practice ultimately. Because even if you think about it biblically, our ability to worship God is related to very closely our knowledge of Him. Mm-hmm. You can't worship God well if you don't know Him well. And so I think there's that knowledge piece, and that knowledge piece isn't just about God's attributes or that sort of thing, but it includes a knowledge of His world, and even just moving that into the love of neighbor. Loving your neighbor well involves knowledge, knowing about humanity, knowing about the world around us to be able to love well.
Yeah, absolutely. Who was your favorite student, by the way? Maybe just put you on the spot right here.
Well,
me sitting right across from
right.
you.
I mean, let's remember that last week's episode, I graciously withdrew myself from consideration from being in the mix for being your favorite teacher.
Okay,
so.
I'll withdraw. I see what you're getting at.
So, I mean, the politically correct answer is, of course, I don't have favorites.
Oh, okay. That's not true, though.
No, it's not.
Okay.
I mean, let's be honest. Like,
teachers have favorites.
They do, and part of that is oftentimes just some students make it easy and enjoyable to teach them, and other students not so much.
Sure.
So, but
I always appreciate students who ask questions in a way to learn something, like they're genuinely curious, And you can tell the difference between a genuinely curious question and somebody that's looking for an axe to grind.
Yes, or looking for an opportunity to flex what they think they know.
Sure, or to have a gotcha moment with the professor, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think, and some of this comes down to whether you view the teacher-student dynamic as an adversarial one or as a sort of a complementary one, a come alongside each other.
Yes. Us versus the material instead of me against you.
Right. And I think that there are some subject matter – there's some subjects that lend themselves more to confrontation and adversarial dynamics. I mean, when you think about theology, for example, and different theological perspectives, obviously you can start to see some of the sparks fly. But I think that asking good questions. I mean, side note, I wrote a book called Asking the Right Questions.
Yes.
So I'm a big fan of asking good questions. But I do think good students tend to ask good questions and don't ask too many of them. and also
they also have a clear understanding of what their question is.
Yes.
Sometimes, and I feel like I'm getting more and more of these students where they start their question and they're like, I don't know what I'm asking, but I'm going to talk it out.
But that's the verbal process.
That's the verbal processor. Yeah. And I'm okay with that every now and then.
Yeah.
But if that's
I'm going to talk my way eventually into something that resembles a question that I'm hoping you can answer.
Yeah. And then it's just like, boy, I don't know how to untie that knot, you know?
Yeah. But, so let's talk about a few things that make a good student then. You mentioned asking questions, asking good questions, asking thoughtful questions. What are some other things that come to mind?
A respect for the subject that we're talking about.
Okay.
So what do I mean by that? Seeing this as a valuable piece of your education, even though it's not directly related maybe to things you're going to do day in and day out.
Yeah.
In a career down the road. But having a respect for the respect for it, that this is something that great people have gone before you in and have learned, and seeing it as valuable. Yeah,
that's good. I'm going to come at it from another angle, because in an ideal world, every subject that a student approaches would be like, oh, that's so interesting. I'm naturally motivated to want to know more about this and to learn it. The reality is that's not the case. Nor is that the case in sort of the real world of work, right? I mean, there are aspects of both of our jobs that we go, this is not my favorite, but I have to do it.
Yeah.
So I do it. And I think that and this is we've talked about this before when it comes to the languages. There is a discipline that comes from having to learn subjects that you're not naturally attracted to, but it requires you to be consistent in putting in the work to learn and be able to use the subject matter.
Yeah.
And I think that there is a sense in which one of the ways that from a Christian perspective we can help students is to help them understand that that their education is ultimately their approach to it is an area of where God requires faithfulness. This is what the Lord has put before you. So you are asked to be faithful with it. And being faithful involves putting forth good effort and putting in the hard work necessary and doing what you need to do in order to learn the material.
And using even assignments that you don't necessarily need as opportunities to learn. So if you've done the good work of getting 100s on all your quizzes and all these things and all your papers, the final is still an opportunity for you to learn something.
Sure. Yeah, and I think when it comes to I guess one of the questions I often wrestle with is how do we create in students that sense of we want to pursue creating a sense of wonder. Like, I mean, our goal as professors is to, at some level, I want to entice you to be interested in this. I want to show you why this is valuable or interesting or important. And yet at the same time, we can't just leave it there and go, well, if I don't capture your attention, then you're off the hook. It doesn't matter, right?
Yeah.
So marrying those two things together of trying to create a passion or an interest in a subject while at the same time holding students and calling students to faithfulness when it comes to even if you don't like this subject, it's still required and still something that is going to be valuable to you for whatever degree or whatever you're pursuing there.
Yeah. Even in a subject like Greek, we have to do things like that. So I try to talk about Surprised by Hope by Lewis, where he talks about his education, and I talk about him basically going into an attic with this old man and learning Greek in the morning. This is all they did in the mornings was Greek learning, and reading Homer, the Iliad, all of those sorts of work, as well as the New Testament.
Yeah.
So trying to create that sense of you're treading the same path as C.S. Lewis.
There you go.
It's pretty exciting.
Yeah, we've talked a little bit about this, but I think it'd be good just to highlight it in terms of curiosity. I think makes a good student.
Oh, yeah.
Just a general sense of curiosity about the world and about God and about His ways.
I talk about that, and I don't know if I'm allowed to do this, but when I go to –
Remember, the first rule of the podcast is don't get fired.
I don't think I'll get fired for this. No.
Okay.
But when I do meetings with students, I'll create values that I'll throw up on the screen that our seminary has that I've quite frankly made up, and one of them is curiosity.
Yeah.
Which I think is noble. I think that's a good one.
I agree. Yeah, and along with that, curiosity when it's married to humility,
yes,
is a great combination. Because we've all seen the student, we've all seen him or her, the one who thinks, I already know all this. And so there's almost this posture of, I dare you to try to teach me something I don't know.
Yeah.
And I don't feel like I see that as much in I don't see it in our college students. And I don't feel like I see it as much as I used to early in my teaching career in terms of seminary.
So interesting. I think I've talked to some people that think that was a Gen X thing. And now that we've sort of, for the most part, I think cycled Gen X out of certainly college, but mostly seminary as well. And now we're into millennials in seminary and some Gen Zers in seminary, and certainly Gen Zers in college that they have a little bit more natural humility maybe than the Gen Xers did.
Yeah.
I don't mean to.
That might be the case. Though I do see I see a modified version of this even among college students at points. And this is hard to say without it sounding self-serving, but I'm going to say it anyway. There have been moments where I've had students who will just utterly dismiss my view, and then, propagate their own view, offer their own view, and they dismiss my view on something as if
they've thought about it as deeply.
They've thought about it as deeply and as long and have studied as much as I have. Now, let me clarify. That doesn't make me right. But what it does make me is someone who's thoughtful and someone whose view probably shouldn't be just casually dismissed with the wave of a hand of an undergrad student who's just learning about the issue. I remember – side story here. I remember in seminary, I did an independent study with Don Carson.
Oh, boy.
And part of the purpose of this was to write a writing sample that would get me into a PhD program. So I wrote a paper and asked him, I said, now I'm asking you to grade it, not just like you normally grade it, but like the fine-tooth comb approach. Asking Don Carson to do this. Oh, gosh. So it was funny. It was like a 30-page paper. And at page 20, he put at the bottom of the page, at this point, I've stopped grading with the fine-tooth comb because I feel like I've identified enough of the sort of picky issues, and now I'm just reading for content and flow and like – but in any case, one of the things I did in a footnote was I noted a view by a scholar, Joe Fitzmyer. He's a Catholic scholar. It's a paper on Romans. And I stated it, and then I said something like, but this view can be safely dismissed or disregarded.
He didn't like that.
Don was not pleased with that. And he basically was like, you are of no standing or stature to make that kind of statement. Now, he might have been able to make it.
Sure.
But not me as a third-year seminary student. And he was just pointing out there needs to be a little bit more humility there before you just casually dismiss his views. So in any case, humility is something that is important. And then the last thing I think I want to hit here is just there are some practical good habits.
Sure.
Study habits, practices in terms of note-taking and regularity of studying and those sorts of things.
Going to bed on time, showing up on time.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that we have to hammer away in Greek is not for like 98% of students. Greek is not something that you can go to class and then do nothing with that until like the night before and think, well, I'll just spend a half hour doing homework and I'll be okay. Nope. No. It's the kind of class that requires consistency and building habits and that kind of stuff.
You can't cram. If you cram, you may pass.
Yeah, but you're not going to get it.
You're not going to do well. Yeah.
So, well, you've got a busy day ahead of you here, John. So we need to move forward here.
In 13 minutes.
What about resources here?
Well, you put both these down. I'll highlight the one that I'm most familiar with. Barnabas Piper, The Curious Christian. We had him on to chat about that book, or chat about all his books, really.
Yeah.
But I find The Curious Christian a helpful one.
Yeah, and I think that's one of those things that applies beyond just
absolutely.
The academic student. I mean, all of us, I think, should have a curiosity about the world that moves us to learn. And then the other one here, Tim Challies wrote a book called Do More Better, which my wife would chafe at the grammar of that. But,
sure.
Then there's a student edition. So he wrote a general one. It's a real short book. But basically it's tips on productivity and kind of organizing your life that can be really helpful. I think some students really struggle until you give them like, okay, here are 4 things you need to do.
Yep.
So do more better. Well, we are on episode 88. So, John, we need an athlete.
Yeah, let's. We've got some great choices this week. So let's tick them off here quickly.
You want to anger these people right from the start here. You said tick them off.
Oh, tick them off. Just mention them.
Oh, okay.
Just kind of like like a.
I thought you might have meant let's anger them.
Let's anger them. No, I think I meant it. I think that's a British idiom and expression, right? To tick them off, to like number them, or anyway, it's a list.
Okay,
we're gonna say the list. Lynn Swann.
Yeah,
Lynn Swann.
I mean one of the iconic members of that
the
Steelers dynasty in the 70s into the early 80s.
I almost said Steel Curtain, but I suppose that's the defense.
Yeah.
Tony Gonzalez.
More your generation here. One of the great tight ends of all time,
and probably was the first modern tight end that I could think of. The pass catcher and the
maybe in your lifetime. I mean, Kellen Winslow back in the 80s. Yeah. Not Kellen Winslow Jr., but
who's a head case. Yeah,
but Kellen Winslow with the Chargers and Dan Fouts was. But yeah, like he was maybe one of the early. Like the modern in terms of like he's a major focus of the offense and we're going to use him a lot. He was one of those early guys that was part of that.
Fun fact, I know some people that are related to Tony Gonzalez. He married into their family, and Tony's a Universalist, interestingly enough.
Okay.
Yeah. Let's see. Michael Irvin.
Irvin. Yeah.
Irvin. Obviously famous Cowboys wide receiver. Who has one of the all-time mouths of all time. I mean, just a big talker.
Yeah, not a fan.
Really?
Yeah, not a fan.
I'm not shocked.
Fun fact about him, he is the 15th of 17 children.
Man.
I can't even wrap my brain around that.
Yeah. Eric Lindros. Do you know who Eric Lindros is?
I knew he was a hockey player.
Yeah. So I remember watching Eric Lindros in the mid-'90s, and he was hated as a flyer for Philadelphia.
Okay. Had a long career.
Yeah. Hockey players tend to. They tend to play for a long, long time.
So, and then for Ohio State, Ben Hartsock was a tight end from 99 to 2003. And then played in the NFL for 10 years. I mean, you play in the NFL for 10 years, that's a good career.
Yeah, bit of a journeyman.
Yeah, Colts, Titans, Falcons, Jets, Panthers, Patriots. I don't know if you remember him passing through your beloved Jets.
I don't.
I don't know how long he was there. And then on the current roster, Jeremy Ruckert is their current tight end, and he doesn't get the ball enough in the Ohio State offense, but I'd be shocked if he's not a first 2 rounds kind of draft pick. He's got those kind of skills.
Who do you like?
Well, I'm ready to eliminate Michael Irvin there.
Okay.
And I'll probably eliminate the hockey guy, Eric Lindros.
Lindros, okay.
And I don't know that either of the Ohio State guys rises to the level of prominence. So that gets us down to Tony Gonzalez and Lynn Swann.
That's where I was as well.
Okay.
With those two.
Did you know Lynn Swann is only 5'11"?
Really?
Yeah. I mean, again, he played in a different era, but still. I mean, do you want to go? I mean,
yeah. Do you go the historical guy, or do you go the more modern guy?
Yeah. Who's a universalist?
Who's a universalist?
Of course, we don't know what Lynn Swann's personal beliefs are. So
yeah, I'm probably inclined to go Tony Gonzalez.
Okay, let's do it.
Okay.
Tony Gonzalez it is. One thing you liked?
Content warning for mine. It's a new show that Andrew and I have discovered on Hulu. Only Murders in the Building. Have you?
I think I've seen like little banner ads for it.
So it's got the 3 main characters are Steve Martin.
Yeah.
Martin Short.
Yes, I have seen ads for this.
And Selena Gomez.
Okay.
And the 3 of them are podcast junkies, and they all live in this one building in New York City, and they've owned Steve Martin and Martin Short have owned their apartments for years, so they have very cheap rent, right? Mm-hmm. And Selena is living off her aunt's place.
Okay.
And there is a dead body found in the building, and when this happens, the fire alarm goes off. They end up in a cafe talking about a podcast that they love. And then they learn about this dead body in the building, and they decide they're going to make a podcast about the murder that's happened in the building or the dead body.
Okay.
It's ruled suicide. They think it's murder. And so they're exploring this. And so it's not – I wouldn't say slapstick in any way, but it is funny. I mean, it is Steve Martin and Martin Short.
Yeah, I was going to ask. I mean, with those two, there has to be a pretty strong comedic element.
And then Selena is just stone cold.
I see.
Just doesn't laugh at what they say, isn't humorous at all.
Okay.
But it's pretty funny.
The classic straight man in comedy terms.
It's very, very good. We've really enjoyed it.
What was the name of it again?
Only Murders in the Building. But content warning, there's some language. I wouldn't say it's pervasive, but there is some language.
Okay. Yeah, that might be something to check out there. All right. So for me, I got a drone. Yeah. So
with your 15 years?
Yeah. So with Grace, I finished out my 15th year, and so they recognize you and they give you one of these little catalogs where it's like, oh, pick out anything in this catalog. And so there was some debate in the Harmon household as to what I should get, and there was nothing in there that I'm like, oh, I really need that. That'd be a good opportunity. And so I just decided I'm going to get the drone because there's no risk. If it ended up being a total piece of junk, I'm not out any money, and so
and it's never something you're going to buy for yourself.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. And when I was a kid, there was a stretch from like 10 to 13 where every year for Christmas I asked for a remote control airplane and never got it.
Wow. So this was
tapping into some deep childhood wounds.
Some young Matt. Some young Matt. Wounds, if we can say.
I got a drone.
Yeah.
And I'm enjoying it. It's I've been out.
Now, does it have a camera on it?
Yeah. It's got a camera that has its own little Wi-Fi network that connects to your phone. So
cool.
You can take pictures and record video. It's HD quality video.
Wow.
And so, I'm out most evenings now, assuming the weather cooperates. It's a little sensitive to the wind.
I bet, yeah.
And it's a little bit of a learning curve to figure out how to fly that thing. But I'm having fun with it. So I bought a drone.
Very
Actually,
nice.
I didn't buy a drone. I got a drone.
You were given a drone by
Grace.
Yeah.
Yes, there you go. All right, well, we got to wrap this thing up because we both have full days ahead.
Yeah, I got a meeting in 4 minutes.
There you go. So we have talked some college football. We've talked what makes a good student. We've talked Tony Gonzalez, the Universalist. John has shared a program with us that has a mild content warning.
Yep.
And I got a drone. Nice. I think by definition we've covered our various and sundry topics, and so we are ready to call mission accomplished. So until next time, the Lord bless y'all real good.
Later.